All right, welcome back, everybody. We've got kind of a last-minute stream here tonight, continuing the project that we were working on on Saturday. So for those of you who are just joining us this time, we are working on upgrading the elm-html-test package or library for Elm 0.19. I'll try to summarize kind of where we're at as we go, but if anybody tuning in live has any questions, feel free to ask as we go. So again, our high-level goal is we're taking the elm-html-test package, which was written by Noah for, I forget if that was originally written in Elm 18 or Elm 17. But anyway, we're taking that and the two other packages that are dependencies of it, and we're taking all of those and merging them into the Elm Explorations test package, which is the primary testing package in Elm 19, and the goal is to just have it include all of this stuff in one single place. So here's kind of our to-do list that we've been building up as we've gone through here and kind of debugging things as we go and discovering the code, because I'd never really looked at it much before starting this upgrade. So we've gotten the test to compile. We're working on getting the test to pass. We've made a lot of progress on that over the last several streams. You can see we started with 112 test failures. We're down to 6 now. So we'll see if we can take care of these last 6 test failures this evening. And after that, let's see, I guess there's some extra tests we need to pull in. We need to make sure we're only exposing the modules that we want to expose. Specifically these we need to make private again. Okay, and some other cleanup stuff and kind of clean up and get the final PR ready. All right, so let's continue where we left off. So we're running this npm test command. And I guess we are ready for the same trick we've been using before to kind of limit everything to just the tests that we want to focus on for the moment. I think we might be down to the very last file of tests. I think, if I remember correctly from Saturday, this is the only one, test example, I think is the only one that's failing. Let's just run the rest of them without that and make sure that everything else is passing. Yeah, great. Okay, so test example is the only one that's failing, which is suspicious because I was imagining from the name this is just an example of what tests look like. So I'm not really sure how this can be failing when all the other tests are passing. So maybe there's some missing test coverage in the main test suite, or maybe there's something simple that's just wrong with this test that'll just fix all of these in one quick go. In any case, I'm going to put only on this just to speed up the test run a little bit. So it's just going to run this set, and it looks like there's only 6 tests in here, so I guess all of these are failing. So actually, let's start with the first one then. All right, so this first test failure, error internally processing HTML for testing. Okay, and if for those of you who've been tuning in over the last few streams, you might recognize this. So basically the way this package works is it takes the virtual DOM representation that normal Elm programs create, uses some native code to turn that into JSON, and then there's a bunch of Elm code here that decodes that JSON. And one of the big changes we discovered between Elm-18 and Elm-19 is that virtual DOM representation and in turn the JSON, the field names have all changed, and they've all been like condensed into optimized field names and things like that. So we have, where is that? In internal types, I think. In internal types, we started defining this map of the field names. So E is the kids field, which has all the children of each node. B is descendants count. And K is node. Okay, so something's really wrong there if it's looking for a node inside of the descendants count. Although I remember we also had B somewhere else. Okay, we had these keyed nodes. Okay. Maybe we should do a quick check through our to-dos. Okay, that shouldn't be a list anymore. That's fine. Node type custom. We haven't run into this yet. I'm not sure if it's actually used in this package. But I'd also be surprised if this example test uses custom DOM nodes, but maybe it does. Encoding, we haven't actually run into any encoding either, but I'm also be surprised if that's involved in this example test. Decode keyed node. Should be tested. Okay, this wasn't tested in queries Elm, but it was tested in the events tests. This is it's apparently doing something with keyed nodes. I'm gonna guess, because here's the only place where we look for a field called B, which it's looking for, and then try inside of that to decode something else. Specifically this context decode Elm. This, I see, is looking for something with a constructor field. Okay, so I'm guessing it's going into that code path from here. So I guess that's where we'll be debugging. And it also suggests that some of this keyed node stuff doesn't have full enough test coverage in the other focus tests. Okay, so let's look at this test and figure out what HTML it's trying to render. Make sure this test makes make sure this test makes sense. So output comes from view. View is coming from this example app module. Okay, and view takes a model. The model is simply the unit value, and it renders class, section, some list. Okay, and then some list, I see here, has the keyed element, and we look in there. Okay, and then all of these are just list elements. One of them has a selected class. They all have different text. Okay, great. So example model should also just be unit. So that'll always be the same. We're looking to find the li tags, and we should get 4. Okay. So that makes sense. The next thing I want to do is go into the native code like we did on Saturday for debugging, and basically dump out this JavaScript object that we're trying to decode from JavaScript, so we can kind of see the structure a bit better, see if there's anything unusual like functions in the object. So let's do that. That's in HTML as JSON JS. And I guess also to note, there's this branch here that we never ran into a reason to bring back. Okay. This actually might be, this might actually be the problem now that I look at it. Because basically what we have here is a keyed node. That means we have a list of tuples where the first item in the tuple is the key, which just is a unique string. And then we have the DOM node, but interestingly, we're using lazy here to cache each of these items. And when we have lazy, this is basically what we were debugging at the end of Saturday. When we have lazy, that basically means that in the virtual DOM, these functions are stored. Whoops. These anonymous functions are stored in the virtual DOM itself. And that's one trick that our native code has to do, is we have this force function, which basically recurses through the virtual DOM. And whenever it finds, which one is it? Whenever it finds this, a node of type thunk, which means lazy, then it evaluates it by passing it the appropriate arguments and basically stores it in a field called node, which is this k. K is the shortened name for node. So this branch looks like it was to recurse into tuples, which, if the keyed nodes store a list of tuples, that branch would basically be recursing into the items inside of a keyed node. And we saw at the end of Saturday that there was a lot of test coverage missing around both the lazy HTML nodes and around the keyed nodes. So we had to backfill some tests for that on Saturday. So actually, I wouldn't be surprised if that is exactly the problem. So why don't we try this? Why don't we try writing a test for this exact case and see if that fails. I'm guessing we can do that. And to do that, let's look at what we did last on Saturday. Oh, I guess it wasn't the very last thing we did. I think it was in this commit, down to 10 test failures. Let's see, tests, events. Okay. Oh, those were extra event tests we added. Okay, maybe it was before that. Tests descendant. Interesting. Okay, I guess I'm misremembering. I thought we totally added some extra test cases to one of these files. In queries. Okay. So let's see if we can add some tests here. These tests are a little bit complicated because they reuse this big sample HTML and sample lazy HTML. Yeah, okay, so here's using lazy, but nothing in here is using keyed along with lazy. So I'm thinking that's going to be the problem. So I think we need to figure out how to add some tests in here. Testers, test containing, test root, test find. I see. Find all. Okay, so this is testing each of these functions. Okay, so I think, let's see this listed again. Find all, keep root first, index, children. Okay, so those are just all the functions in query. So let's add something to find. Test find finds one child. Oh, what is this doing? This is testing calling find with an empty list of selectors. I am not sure what that's really supposed to mean. Test find. Huh. Okay, I am not really following the organization of this. Let's just add a new test in here and we can figure out later where to best put it. So let's test that lazy nodes inside of keyed nodes are instantiated. Okay, so in this case, I guess let's start right off the bat with a keyed DOM element. So this will be html.keyed. Actually, I think it comes from another package. Let me look up the docs for this. So I don't actually use keyed nodes that often. HTML keyed. Okay, so let's import HTML keyed as keyed, and we will create a keyed node. The first thing is the node type. So let's make a div. I feel like div is the simplest HTML element, so we'll stick with that. Then we get a list of attributes and then a list of children, but the children have a key with each of them. Okay, so the attributes is empty. The children will be, I guess, first HTML text. Right, and here we were going to put lazy dot-lazy, and we'll make a function that simply gives HTML text, first text, and pass it the value. And then the same thing for a second one. Actually, I think we don't even need a second value in here to make this test read. And Rent, welcome to the stream. Thanks for following. Sorry, I'm a little behind on watching the notifications, but welcome. And yeah, again, if anyone watching live has some questions about what we're doing or wants to ask anything else about Elm development in general, feel free to say hi in the chat. This is kind of a last minute, late night for most people stream. So I'm expecting a much thinner crowd than normal, but if anybody is around, feel free to ask questions or chat about anything you want. Okay, so we're going to make our key node containing lazy. Then I guess basically we just want to check and make sure this text shows up. So to do that, we need query.fromHTML, then query.has text, which comes from the selector module, first text. Okay, I think that should be our failing test. And again, I'm not sure why Elm format is not being run properly. Is not being run properly by VS Code in this project, but let's see. Okay, then we will take our only off of here and queries. Let's add only to this one for a moment. Okay, right, so this is the test we just wrote. And this is the same error that we saw earlier. Inside of a something.b.k, it got an undefined and it was expecting an object with $. So yeah, I'm pretty confident now that this is going to be this is the root of the problem. And if we go to HTML as JSON, I'm also pretty sure that this code is going to be the code that we are looking at. So I'm just going to console.log the v node. So this forThunks function is going to get called recursively basically on everything in our virtual DOM tree when we when we call this from HTML function. So we've only got a handful of nodes, 1, 2, 3. I think that counts as 3. So this shouldn't print too much. Let's see if this gives us any useful info. Yikes. Okay, that was a lot. Let's debug.log. I think it's just printing a bunch of values that it computes elsewhere. Okay. Let's see if we can find this. Okay, here we go. So here's our div. This has children, which is a list of tuples. Okay, actually we ran into this on Saturday. Where did we run into that? I thought we ended up using this. Oh, that's what this B was from. In our internal types, basically the JSON value here that we're decoding is the tuple, which is this object here. The first item in the tuple is the key, and the second object is the DOM node. Okay, and then we recurse into that list of children, and then we try to forThunks on this object, which is the tuple, and that is what this branch was for. However, the internal representation has notably changed in Elm-19. So we used to have this thing called ctor, which would have a value of _tuple2, now we have this $sign field, and this is just #2 apparently. And when we do this, and then also the _1 field is now called B. Okay. And then I don't think we need this. This is saying if vnode is not undefined and vnode's constructor or variant name is $2, then it's going to have an A and a B field on it. and it's saying and vnode.node, there isn't one. I'm not sure why that check would be there. I'm guessing that was just in there because there was some copy and paste between these different branches, and probably it was just confusing when the original code was written. So that's my guess. I guess worst case, we break something for some obscure case, but people can report this, and I'd rather, I think, identify those and add the test coverage. Okay, great. So that made that test pass. So that makes me feel better, since we identified exactly the code that existed before. We didn't have to write any new code. We backfilled this test. Let's see. So let me take this only off now. And I'm wondering if this will actually, I'm actually hoping, I'm expecting this will maybe make all of these example tests pass as well. Yes, okay. We have a passing test suite, finally. For the first time since we started this project, what, like 2.5 weeks ago? So perfect. Now we need to format all this code. And now this should actually give a full passing test run. Great. All right, so let's see what we just did. So we brought back this code, which is great because I was wondering when that was going to be needed. And to do that, we backfilled this test, and this had the side effect of making the example tests pass. All right, cool. So now we can get on with our to-do list. We got the test passing, but we are only 2 items into our to-do list here. Let's go ahead and add this to this last commit. Okay. So our next task here is, like I mentioned earlier, we're basically pulling 3 packages over into this one: elm-html-test, elm-html-query, I think, and elm-html in Elm. And we moved the tests over for 2 of those. We still have this last one remaining, and I think it had 1 test file. So let's go and pull that over. Let's see, I think I have it checked out somewhere. elm-html in Elm. Okay. So what do we have here? tests. Okay, this has one file of tests. And, this also has some extra native code. Not sure why that is necessary. What is that used for here? Oh, interesting. Okay. I'm not sure what we're going to be able to do with these tests, because it looks like they have some of their own kernel code. But maybe we can convert them to use a more public API. So let's try moving this over. So this is elm-html-tests, I guess. Are there other kind of tests in here? elm-html, elm-html-to-html, elm-html to string attributes. Yeah, okay. I think this is fine for a name. Then this is gonna come over here into this folder. Oops. Okay, let me shuffle these windows around. This will go here. Then, like I've mentioned before, we have a kind of unusual test setup in this project because it's not really a normal Elm project, because it's like testing the test library itself. So we actually have to go and add this to the list, elm-html-tests.all, and import that. And then I guess also then we have to list everything. All equals describe elm-html-tests. I should just call that elm-html. And then we need to find every top level thing in here. elm-html. Let's see, can I collapse this? Great. This one. This one. Attributes as a test. What else we got here? Okay, that looks like all the tests. Okay, and then all is the only thing we need to expose from this. All right, let's see how that goes. And we need to update this to match the file name. All right, so this test is using the SVG package because SVG actually has some elements that use namespaces, like these hlink. Yeah, okay, this is testing namespace stuff. So I feel like the easiest thing to do here is just to add SVG as a dependency of the tests. Shouldn't really cause any problems. So let's go into the tests folder. We will run elm install elm-svg. And I'm actually going to change this to version 1.0.0. We've been doing this in in this library just to ensure that it works with older versions. All right. Okay. So now it's complaining about this, which I'm not sure. Okay, that was HTML as JSON. That's HTML as JSON. That's the file we ended up putting here, which exposes to JSON, event handler, tagger function, and attribute to JSON. Whereas in this test package, this had unsafe coerce, sounds bad, event decoder, which is the old name, like we renamed event decoder to event handler on Saturday, and tagger function. I wonder if we had to add this to JSON. I don't even remember. It's been a while. Let's see. Yeah, okay. We didn't check in the original versions of all these files, so I can't actually go back that far in history. Okay. So I'm not understanding why this file was here in the tests folder. Let's see, did it used to exist in the main project? No. So maybe it was just available from the tests folder. Homepackage.json. Source directories was just dot. Oh. Okay, let's check the original version of this on GitHub. Oops. Where is it? Here. So this did have a tests file with native code, and this did not have native code. Then what package did that native code come from when we originally copied it? It must have been the elm-html query. Nope, that one didn't have any native code in it. Did HTML-test itself have the native code? Yes. Interesting. Okay. So for some reason this elm-html in elm package has what looks like an old version of this native code in the test suite. Okay. Well, we definitely do not want our tests to depend on native code. So let's remove that and see what problems that leads to. Let's see if we can just fix this up. Okay. elm-html.toElmString. Okay. Oh no, that's here. toElmString. I see. But this is not exposed publicly. So this is another thing. We'll temporarily expose this module so that our tests can run, and then we'll be adding it to our to-do to remove this from the publicly exposed modules. And again, this is kind of due to the weird setup for running the tests in this particular project. In a normal Elm package or an Elm application, you would be able to import your unpublished modules into your tests, but the way this is set up, we kind of have to pretend we like fake publish the test package itself, and then the tests kind of act as a separate project that we have to compile. Anyway, that's very specific to this particular library. So in our main Elm JSON, we are going to, just for now, expose this, and we have it in our list to remove from here later when we can focus on just doing that. Okay, so now this is a module that's never been compiled before in Elm 19. So we've got some variable name shadowing. What do we want to call this? Guess let's just call this one or more styles. And toString, let's see, line 131. What is V here? Bool attributes. This looks like it's going to be a bool. So we've written a bool to string elsewhere. Let's just copy this. And okay, to HTML. Looks like our test's also trying to import that. So let's add this to the list as another thing that we, in the end, don't want to expose, but need to temporarily expose. All right, so then in here, we've got two problems. Line 79. The value at facts.events is a dictionary containing virtual DOM handlers, but it needs it to be decoders. Okay, this was something we changed on Saturday in the facts.events. So this virtual DOM handler thing is actually correct. So for whatever reason, let's see, events to attributes. So this function must be wrong. Yeah, okay. So now this needs to take a virtual DOM handler instead of a decoder. And that was the difference between the handler basically contains a decoder of messages, but it also contains information about options for the event, like prevent default, stuff like that. Okay, so what does that mean here? Dict to list. So this is going to be the event name, and this is going to be the handler. Okay, so that's not going to work quite right. I think maybe we can just use the virtual DOM .on here, which I think takes a handler. Okay, so that's going to give a compile error. Oh, first of all, because we haven't imported virtual DOM in this file yet. Yeah, okay. So line 58. So the problem is this, because HTML events on, what does that even take now? I think the API for that might have changed as well. Okay, on takes the name and a decoder. And then there's these special functions that do this stuff. Yeah, okay. So I think we're going to need to go a bit lower level to the virtual DOM, although what even is this module for? This is a module that basically turns the decoded HTML back into real HTML. Okay, I think we're probably just going to end up deleting this module in the end. But I'm kind of curious just to learn more about what all is in this code. So let's continue with trying to fix these tests, even though I'm pretty sure this whole module is just going to get deleted before we publish this. Okay, so here we go. Virtual DOM.on takes the event name and the handler, which is what we have, and gives an attribute. So hopefully we can just use that. Whoops, that's the wrong one. This one. Virtual DOM.on. Okay, great. And now line 53. What is the issue here? This style value is a function that takes a list of key values and gives a C, but it's expecting it to be a list. It's expecting it to be a function that takes two strings. Yeah, I thought this message seems backwards to me. So in elm-19, HTML attribute style takes two strings, the style name and the style value, and that's it. Whereas in elm-18, it took a list of tuples, I think. So let's double check that. So attributes.style, yeah, so this HTML attributes, and we aren't doing anything weird with imports. Yeah, so this is a function that takes two strings and gives a single attribute back. I see, and this is a dictionary that contains all the styles. Okay, so this actually needs to return a list. Let's uncurry this function. Then I see, we're going to list.map this and get the style name and the style value. And these are actually going to come from a tuple. Okay, so I think that is correct for this. However, wherever this is used, we're now giving a list back. Oh, perfect. And this was just wrapped in a list in the past, and now we can remove that. Okay. Well, I see one easy error we can fix. elm-html-tests. I put the wrong type there. It's just singular test. All right, so now we've got a bunch of errors here, starting with shadowing. Okay, 233, event decoder. Okay, I'm not sure why we need this, first of all. What is this doing? This seems like it has a bunch of copies of of the actual implementation code. I'm not really sure why. So let's just get rid of all this stuff that's coming from the native module and see if we can just get rid of it. Oops. So this will mean, first of all, that event decoder line 313 test parsing event. This is using event decoder. So what is this even doing? This seems strange to me. So we start with our virtual DOM, like our real elm-html stuff. We call from HTML, which I'm assuming is coming from, oh, where is that coming from? I thought this was going to be the one that was from the query function. Oh, but it's not. Okay. So this is calling decode value with decode elm-html. Okay, that's the real function that we are testing. Okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking, when we get to removing all these, that's going to be a good stream about testing around public API boundaries. So, I feel like that's going to be a lot of cleanup work. But I think it should actually leave the code in a pretty nice state. But again, I'm trying to stay focused on just getting these to work first, and then we can refactor stuff separately. So 313. So what seems weird to me is the fact that we are decoding things on both the actual and expected side of the test. I'm going to take this and inline it first of all. And wait, what is decode node? Decoded node, what even is that? That comes from here. Okay, I'm going to inline that also into this here, which means that tag will be button and fax will be fax here. Okay, so that's a start. Then we'll take expected and inline this. Okay, so this is still gonna fail because we don't know what event decoder is yet. And then node, this is our real thing. I'm going to inline that too. And then fax, let's inline this also. Okay. So that's a bit more straightforward of a test. We're basically just taking this and expecting it to equal a particular thing. Decoded fax, that's this. So let's stick this in also. And events is going to be this. Actually, this seems fine, I think, to leave as a record extension because there's so much verbosity in here. But let's rename decoded facts to be empty facts. All right. So line 310, so we still have this problem with event decoder, which event decoder was coming from the kernel code. I guess we still have access to that. It's just called event handler now. Oh, so what is this? Yeah, okay. Dot event handler. So in our real code, we use this. HTML inert. That's one that we're already exposing to the tests. So I guess we could just use that and import this. It's kind of just like kicking the problem down the road. But that is actually available in this other module. Oh. Well, it doesn't actually expose that, so I guess that's good. All right, let's take a closer look at this test. So this test is trying to parse an event. So what even is this testing? Test parsing event. This is called 3 times. Okay, so it's testing that it can parse a click event, an on-input event, and a change event for an on-check. And it's what, just checking that it can parse it? Interesting. So it doesn't seem to actually care, or it's like checking that it can parse it via this from HTML function. But then it's asserting that the parsed value matches the value that would be decoded. I'm not sure I really understand the point of this test. Also, what is this covering? This is covering click, input, and change. So if we have coverage that proves that this works at the high level, then I would be comfortable deleting these tests. So let's take a look at that. That would be in the events tests. Let's do a quick refactoring here, and let's rename this set of tests to be in a nicer place in the structure, because this essentially is testing stuff on test HTML event. So I'm going to stash this real quick. Then let's rename events. Actually, I want to make a folder for it. So we're in tests source. We're going to have test, I guess, in here. Then we're going to have HTML. Then we're going to have, actually, we don't need another folder. So events will go here. And this will be events, event tests to basically match this name. Then tests itself is now going to import that. Test HTML event tests. And that'll replace this. Okay. Great, everything passes, and we need to reformat. Oops, we need to do this one with the whole source folder. And okay, so we're moving this here. We moved it from here. Then we updated this. And this file is from the stash, which we are not committing yet. Great, that passes. So we are renaming events to test HTML event tests. I guess we can maybe do a couple more while we're at it. Let's move selectors and queries also. So selectors becomes test HTML selector tests. This can also be that. Great. This can stay there. This needs to be renamed to selector tests and tests itself. This is now test HTML selector tests. Okay, and while those tests run, let's stage that, stage this, stage that, and now we renamed selectors to selector tests. Great. And finally, the same thing for queries. This is test HTML query tests. And the same thing here. Queries becomes test HTML query tests. All right, and we will stage that. We move that file from here, and we rename the usage. Looks great. Whoops. Oh, and I forgot to rename this. Query tests. that, and that. And this can be amended to this. Cool. Looks great. Okay. Let's fix this conflict real quick. Okay. That seems... Oh, I see. We want... How does this work? We want that one. Okay. Okay. Cool. So we've been going a while. I'm going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will continue what we were just about to look at of taking, which one is it? These tests here, these event tests, and checking if we already have test coverage over this in the event test itself, which I'm pretty sure we do. And if we can just verify that, then we can just delete these tests and remove basically a bunch of these errors that are happening in here. So I'm going to take a quick 5-minute break, and we'll be right back, and we can continue from there. So see you soon.